All right, let's take a look at some of the ways that we can deliver speeches. Any questions about the differences or the similarities between public speaking and conversation? All right, the first method of speech delivery is called a manuscript speech. This is a speech that is written out word for word and then read to the audience. Now, speaking from a manuscript takes a tremendous amount of skill to be able to sound like you're just talking rather than reading to your audience. A tremendous amount of skill. But it does have its place. There are people who want to make sure that their words are very accurate. Politicians will always speak from a manuscript because they want to make sure that they say exactly what they intend to say and nothing else. Researchers will usually speak from a manuscript because they're reporting their research findings. They want to make sure that they report exactly what they found and don't mess up numbers and that kind of thing. So it does have its place, but it is hard to give a manuscript speech and sound like you know that you're just talking rather than reading to them. The second kind of speech is called a memorized speech, and this is just like a manuscript speech. You write the whole thing out word for word, but then you memorize it instead of reading it. You just memorize the whole thing. Again, it takes a lot of skill to be able to give a speech from memory and sound like you're just speaking, just having a conversation with them, rather than, delivering a memorized speech. These can even sound read because you just memorized, basically. So you're just reading out of your mind instead. An impromptu speech. Impromptu literally means off the cuff in Latin, and this is a speech delivered with little or no immediate preparation. Now, sometimes you can't help but be stuck doing an impromptu speech. Have you ever been in a meeting at work and they say, hey, would you tell us about blah, 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 whatever it is that you're doing? Bless you. And you can't help yourself. You have to speak. So here's my suggestion to you. If you ever have to give an impromptu speech, bless you again, I encourage you to just, if you have even 10 seconds or 30 seconds, jot down a couple of notes to yourself right in front of you so that when you start to speak, you can glance down and remember what you wanted to say. Have you ever started speaking and your mind goes blank? You can't remember anything you wanted to say? Okay. So if you jot down just a couple of notes in front of you, then you can glance down at those when you go to speak. All right. An extemporaneous speech. This is a carefully prepared, rehearsed speech that is presented from a brief set of notes. Extemporaneous is the delivery style that we are going to use for most of your speeches in this class. It is the best delivery style for the majority of audiences, and the reason is because it allows you to tap into that conversational quality that we were talking about at the beginning of class. Remember the list that we made and how we said that the majority of those characteristics were also characteristics of conversation? Well, extemporaneous delivery, you have a brief set of notes in front of you. You glance down at your notes, you see what you wanted to talk about, and then you look up and you simply choose the best words for the moment. So you're literally just talking to your audience. You're just having a conversation with them. Now, it requires the most preparation, if you think about it. Because if I'm just going to talk to you about what I'm going to talk to you about, I have to know what I'm going to talk about, right? I have to do a lot of preparation to know what it is that I'm going to say. So it requires you to be the most prepared, but then it also presents the best delivery of the speech because you're just choosing the best words. You're having a conversation. I can look directly at you. I'm not glued to my notes. All I did was look down at my notes, and I look back up at you, and I'm just talking to you, okay? So extemporaneous is what we're going to do for the majority of our speeches in the class. Does anybody have any questions about the 4 different kinds? All right, let's watch an example of an extemporaneous speech. This is Elizabeth Dole, and she's speaking to the Democratic National Convention before her husband ran for president.
And I certainly will never forget his last day as Majority Leader of the United States Senate. I was seated up in the balcony, and I was watching as Senator after Senator, Democrats and Republicans, stood and paid tribute to my husband on the Senate floor. They talked about his countless legislative achievements, how he had led the United States Senate to successfully pass the largest tax cut in the history of the United States of America. They talked about how he had saved Social Security. And I just want to quote from a letter. This is Claude Pepper. As you know, he was the champion of seniors. And he wrote to Bob May 11, 1983. He thanked Bob for his extraordinary contributions, saying, and I quote, "You never lost hope and faith in our accomplishing the immeasurable task of saving Social Security. We could never have produced this result without your skill and sincerest desire to make a meaningful contribution." That's leadership, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, do you think she'd practiced that once or twice before she got up to deliver that speech? Would you speak to that many people without having practiced your speech once or twice before you got up to speak? Now, she probably practiced that a few times, don't you think? But did she sound like she was just talking to them? Okay. This is called conversational quality, and this is what we're going for. Conversational quality is presenting a speech so that it sounds spontaneous, no matter how many times it has been presented. Conversational quality. The lecture that I'm giving to you guys today, I have delivered this literally more times than I can count. But I chose my words specifically for you today. I made my message adapted directly to you guys at this college in this particular time. So, no matter how many times you've rehearsed it, you want it to sound spontaneous, and that's what we're going for. Any questions?